Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about something, and maybe it's just some ramblings, but things that I've had to think about more and more as I continue to lift as I get older. Again, I'm about to turn 47. Gosh, this video might not even be up before my birthday. So something I've had to think about is, I'm probably not going to gain a lot more muscle. Can I gain a little more muscle? Sure. I'm a very advanced lifter. I've been doing this a long time. Again, getting older. And the things that we have to think about as we do this is sometimes that maybe I'm not going to make a lot more gains, but what then do we do? What can we achieve? And something that I have personally noticed observing, say, physique guys who are still pretty strong, and that's kind of where I'm drifting with my own training. Obviously, I want my big lifts to be strong. I still want to do some powerlifting meets, but I am focusing a little more on physique and stuff. And one of the things that I've realized, we can continue to refine and get better. And that is something I have observed in other people, friends of mine, over the years. I mean, a perfect example would be my friend Nico, who I did that podcast with. We'll probably do more of those. But one of the things I've noticed with him, he's been doing this, 30 years. 30 years. And of course, he got a Natty Pro card in bodybuilding over 20 years ago at this point. Yet he has, in his 40s, changed his look a little bit, meaning over the years, one of the things that I've noticed, and you'll see the physique world will call it muscle maturity. But I see the same thing in powerlifters, by the way, in strength athletes. Some of the leaner strength athletes who are over 40. And what's one of the things that you notice? It's that muscle maturity. There's a certain density, there's a certain hardness that you see there that wasn't always there a decade before. Okay? Now, we could debate a lot as to what actually causes that. I've seen some experts who've discussed that, over time, the myofibrillar growth or certain faster twitch fibers are the only thing that continues to grow, right? At least without substances being thrown in the mix, right? That's usually one of the big deals for a lot of bodybuilders who get big, is that all the stuff they take allows some of those intermediate fibers to really start growing again that wouldn't otherwise grow, okay? But as the longer we train, the less and less of our slower twitch and even intermediate fibers really hypertrophy anymore. Now, that could be a factor. Could just be better myofibrillar growth. Could be the fact that maybe our muscles just seem to get harder through loss of intramuscular fat more easily. Maybe it's because the skin gets thinner. I don't know that we always have the exact scientific answers to this. I think it has more to do with the composition of muscles after years and years and years and years and years of training. It's just there's a certain density that appears more easily. Now, you do see that replicated by guys a little younger if they use certain stuff. But in the guys who aren't always using this stuff, you start to see it appear. Okay? And it's, again, you'll see the physique world will call it muscle maturity. Okay? But it's just that we get harder, we get more refined, and it seems like even sometimes when you're not as lean, certain vascularities, certain striations and things come out more, even at the same body fats, as we've been doing this a lot longer. But definitely when the guys get leaner, there's just a certain density and hardness that appears, after decades of training. And it's, again, particularly noticeable as body fat comes down. And of course, I'm in the process of cutting now. A lot of people have noted, even at the time of making this, I'm the leanest they've ever seen me. And I'm going to continue to get leaner, continue to refine things, right? But look at certain even fitness influencers who've gotten quite older, aren't even that big, and yet they have a certain look. I mean, even someone like Jeff Cavalier. I'm not saying he's the best source of information, but when you look at it, even he's kind of done that, hasn't he? There's just a certain level of hardness and striations and muscle density that comes out. And so that is something to work towards. And that is something I'm even looking at as I continue to diet down and work on these things of saying, okay, can we just refine the physique and look harder? Can we look more chiseled? And like I said, I don't think that's always a case of just at a certain body fat, because you don't see it always in people with less training experience, unless they have, again, gone really hard in certain drugs, and they're going to pay a price for that. But when that isn't the case, that's something we observe. There's just a certain density that appears, and that's something worth working on. Right? That's something worth working on. And again, people say, well, that's just always the heavy lifting, but is it always the heavy? What if you just keep taking a weight that a lot of people think is heavy and improve your volume with that? It still seems to produce all of that. That's been the thing that baffles me with that, of why wouldn't you continue to see the same effects of progressive overload even if you just added more weight, more reps with the same weights over year after year? Like let's say bench press, let's say certain point you can do 8 or 10 reps for a pause at 225. Well, what happens when you build that up to 15 or 20, even if it takes you years later to do it? Same thing with the squatting. I still think we see a lot of that effect occur even with guys who are doing a fair amount of rep work. All right? And I still think it comes down to, I think a lot of it has to do with which muscle fibers we've hypertrophied, right? And in the sense of it's the longevity under the barbell that seems to cause that. And I think to some extent it's tied somehow to the muscle fiber distribution, particularly when the data has come out showing that the longer we train, the less and less the intermediate and slowest twitch fibers grow. And that can start happening within the first few months as they go up the chain, the rate coding chain. And I think it's because maybe they're now really growing those deepest, faster twitch fibers the most. And it just seems like there's more density involved, or maybe it's just the higher ratio of myofibular growth over time, right? But there's just a certain hardness that appears. And I think that is something worth talking about. And it's not a topic I've ever discussed in the past, things like muscle maturity, because it sounds so ambiguous. It sounds so esoteric. But it isn't a thing that we see. We see it over and over and over displayed. I've watched it for generations. It seems to be a thing. And I wish that we had a better scientific understanding of it, so that we could create more finite goals towards it. But I think it's just continuing to increase the overload and continuing to train and do these things for the long term. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.